Hello everyone. I want to make an update about the situation in Thailand, and this is in light of a video I made recently whereby I was criticising some Thais living in the UK who have targeted pro-democracy activists living here. I stand by everything I said in that video. That's my most viewed video so far, so obviously got quite a lot of attention, over 12,000 views now, much more than my usual videos, so I'm pleased about that. I'm pleased that information is being spread. Of course, I'm not the only one. There's many other people out there very concerned at this situation. So basically, if I was quite angry in the video, so I want to just re-emphasize some of the points I was making. If you're a Thai in the UK, I want you to have a good experience. If you're a tourist, if you're an overseas student, if you're a business person, I hope you have a good experience here. And I didn't want that video to come across as particularly nationalistic, but I do stand by what I was saying, because there had been, I'm not going to name names, but there had been people in London harassing people also of Thai heritage who are basically trying to raise awareness of the situation in Thailand. And this harassing has taken the form of violent threats, cyberbullying, some truly unpleasant stuff. And it made me very angry that these people think they can take advantage of the freedom of expression in this country in order to abuse that freedom by attacking others and trying to silence others. It's a complete disgrace. Anyway, to get to the point, I've been following somewhat the current situation in Thailand. It's certainly a very sad situation there right now. A large number of Thais have tried to make excuses for the military coup that took place a few months ago by saying that a lot of people support it, and General Prayuth is trying to bring stability to the country. This is a propaganda that's being put out there. Now, if you've any idea about Thai politics over the last 5-6 years, you'll know it's a deeply divided country. But all the signs I see is that this coup has brought nothing but detrimental effects to democracy in Thailand. Democracy in Thailand was already very fragile before the coup happened. Now it's almost non-existent, because essentially since the coup took place, Thailand has become a one regime state. I don't want to say one party, because the military junta is not a party. Its official name is the National Council for Peace and Order. Now, to give you a bit of background, Thailand is a country that has experienced more than its fair share of coups, going back to 1932, the year it in theory became a constitutional monarchy. But Thailand is a country where the king has a personality cult that cannot be seen in any other constitutional monarchy, and it has some of the harshest laws in the world concerning lèse-majesté, which means offence to majesty. There's been many Thais persecuted under this insane law, a law that is a brutal attack on free expression. Now, the law has been in place for a long time, but it's escalated in recent years, and since the coup, I fear it's only going to get worse. The situation right now in Thailand is very tense. It's not a war zone, I wouldn't say that, but it's, from an outside perspective, what I see is a very tense society. And it's not an exaggeration to say it's become a one regime state, because Prayuth and his cronies have essentially enacted a lot of very draconian laws that are an absolute attack on democracy. Among those laws are, for example, political gatherings are forbidden, which is a very vague sort of concept. That's not the same as saying protests are forbidden. Political gatherings are forbidden. So essentially, having a political opinion in Thailand that is the wrong political opinion, you will be targeted. And I'll give you some examples of people who have been targeted. A young man who was publicly reading George Orwell's 1984 to make a point about the absolute erosion of free expression, he was harassed by the authorities. And actually I shouldn't even use that word because it gives them some sort of legitimacy. An elderly woman who wore a t-shirt saying, respect my vote, my vote. This is referring to the recent election, which basically the coup has completely violated. By making that illegitimate, the yellow shirt movement have actively tried to sabotage that democratic election by blocking polling stations and so on. It was widely covered at the time. Foreigners have also been targeted. There was, I believe it was a Belgian man in the middle of Bangkok who was arrested for wearing a pro-democracy t-shirt. There's many other incidents like this happening in Thailand right now. I've just read an excerpt from General Prayuth. This is his excuse. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll put a link on this video. But he says, I'm reading the end here. Problems concerning labour, human trafficking and abuse of democracy have accumulated for a long time, and it will take some time to ease them. In this regard, rules and regulations will have to be revised to meet international standards and prevent the abuse of state authority. Various measures will also be improved to eliminate corruption. What we're essentially seeing in Thailand is basically a dictatorship developing with General Prayuth at its head. The tragedy here is Thailand is starting to resemble Burma, the way Burma was about 5 years ago. The irony is Burma has actually made some significant reforms and is starting to move forward. Whilst it's far from perfect, I would argue it is a better situation than it was 5-10 years ago. Thailand, on the other hand, is getting gradually worse. This, I believe, is the 18th or 19th coup d'etat in modern Thai history, which is an incredible number. And just to give you a bit of background, and this is something I can freely say here, but if I said this in Thailand I would be arrested, because this is actually breaking lèse majesté. The king in Thailand is essentially a constitutional monarch, so in theory he's not meant to interfere in politics. But he has given royal blessing for General Prayuth and his cronies, and basically royal endorsement of this coup. Now, given the human rights violations that have taken place since the coup was enacted in Thailand, that essentially means King Bhumipol is endorsing those human rights violations. And I know what I have just said will basically, if I said that in Thailand, I would be lynched, because there is a real personality cult, and there are some fanatical royalists out there who have a very warped notion of what free speech is. They say it's fine, but not so long as the monarchy is concerned. So in other words, they pick and choose what free speech means. But basically, the idea that Bhumipol is just a sort of passive observer. I used to think that. I've always hated lèse majesté laws, and I've always hated Article 112. But the more I've learned, the more I realise actually this monarch has a very shady position in Thai politics, in that whenever there has been royal endorsement of these coups, that essentially means the King of Thailand is endorsing moves in his country that are eroding democracy. So when Western heads of state, like my Queen Elizabeth II, endorse Thai royals, that's shameful, quite frankly. We should not be having anything to do with it. Although, having said that, I believe that all royals stick together. Although there's varying degrees of influence, but I believe all royals stick together. Which is why I'm not a die-hard royalist in this country. But thank goodness we don't have the situation that there is in Thailand. Thank goodness I can openly criticise the Queen. And I do think she's wrong to constantly wine and dine some very unpleasant individuals. I'm talking about certain Arab dictators. But anyway, I'll give you another example, and this is from a reliable source in Thailand. Now, I don't want to name names because I don't want to put anyone in danger, but I have come across a reliable source which is very distressing, very unsettling. This is basically paperwork for those who have been arrested. They're not being held in long-term detention because this junta is being very careful about what they're doing. They're waging a huge publicity campaign to try and make themselves look good in the international community, because the EU and the US have already raised concerns about what is going on in Thailand. Well, anyway, this is what the paperwork says for those who are released from custody after long periods of basically detention without trial. And this is what my source says. This is a form that people detained by the junta have to sign before they are released. I have redacted personal details to protect the identity of the source, and the English translation follows. And obviously there's information left out here for obvious reasons. I, age, citizen, identification number, ethnicity, nationality, religion, occupation, house number, blank, where I'm saying it means blank, street, blank, vicinity, blank, sub-district, blank, district, blank, province, blank, telephone number, blank, have been detained under Article 15, brackets 2 of the Martial Law of 1914 on the date, blank. Now I am allowed by officials to return to my residence for normal living from the date, blank. During the detention at the regiment, blank, I was treated well and was not hurt, forced, coerced, deceived, tortured, promised, or mistreated in any way. I have also received all personal belongings that I brought with me. I have read and understood the announcement of the National Council for Peace and Order, number 17, 2014, dated the 24th of May 2014, which concerns the conditions upon release of persons who have reported themselves to the NCPO. The announcement is attached with this document. I hereby agree to the following. I take residency at the address, blank, and shall not travel outside the kingdom unless permitted to do so by the head of the NCPO. I shall not participate in any political movement or meeting anywhere. If I violate the two conditions above, or do anything to support any political activity, I agree to be prosecuted and have all my financial transactions prohibited. An official has read out the conditions above to me until I understood thoroughly, and have accepted them. Thus, I hereby produce a signature or fingerprint as evidence. I have also attached a certified copy of my citizen identification card. So this paperwork is essentially a blueprint for an absolute attack on basic civil liberties. Now, you will say that if you commit an offence in any country, the police will give you paperwork, but only in dictatorships do you see sort of language like I was not tortured, I was not mistreated, etc, etc, etc. Now, I'm not accusing the military junta of torturing people. I've got no evidence to say that, so I'm not going to sit here and accuse the junta of that. But the very fact that they put this in the paperwork shows that they are hiding something, because unless you're stupid, you would realise that they're trying to cover themselves by basically forcing these people to be utterly subservient to their autocratic rule. I mean, you don't need to be a genius to work out this is an absolute attack on basic civil liberties. And I believe strongly that this argument about doing it for the good of the nation and for stability is an excuse. I believe there's political forces behind the junta. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm not saying I have other details that are sort of top secret or anything like that. But I believe there is something very sinister going on in Thailand right now. And the fact that a number of Thais, mostly people in Bangkok, who tend to be better off Thais, are supporting the junta, doesn't really prove anything, because throughout history, many hardline regimes were initially supported. There's another example in Southeast Asia, which in 1975 took over in Cambodia. That was the Khmer Rouge. Now, initially there was widespread support of the Khmer Rouge because of what that little country had been through. They believed that the Khmer Rouge was patriotic, they believed they were going to bring stability and so on. What followed was one of the most hideous regimes of the 20th century. Now, I'm not for a second saying that the junta in Thailand is going to be like the Khmer Rouge, but there are certain things going on there that are very unsettling. In another example of the sort of brainwashing and Orwellian situation that is developing, there was a number of young female soldiers who were on loudspeakers in Bangkok, and I've seen the photographs, I've seen the videos, and they were trying to promote happiness for the nation and basically love for the junta. Now, if you look at this, this is absolutely the hallmarks of a dictatorship. It's akin to something that you would see in North Korea. That's no exaggeration. If you look at what is gradually happening in Thailand and the current situation in North Korea, it's not that different. Now, Thailand is still not quite at the level of North Korea, because there are a lot of enlightened Thai people, and there are a lot of people very angry about what the junta is doing, but they're not necessarily in a position to speak out, and I think it's a very dangerous situation. It was bad enough when Article 112 was being enforced, but now you have a situation where even political activity is being crushed. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about people who are violently rioting. I'm not talking about people who are throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers, something like that. So this isn't a situation whereby these are just riot police trying to control rowdy protesters. We are talking about brutal attacks on basic civil liberties. And if you look on YouTube, there's plenty of videos showing peaceful Thai people protesting against the junta and being arrested for the simple fact that they don't want this in their country. And yes, I know the junta has support, but Thailand's a very divided country, and there's many Thais who are very concerned about what's going on. So I, as an outsider, the purpose of me making this video is simply to try and express my concern at the situation and try to make people aware that Prayev's propaganda is not really working, because a lot of people can see past this, and basically what it is an excuse to attack basic civil liberty. Now, if he claims this is all about stability, then as soon as possible he will allow a general election to take place. But there's absolutely no signs that they are going to do that anytime soon. So essentially what we have right now in Thailand is a dictatorship in the form of a military junta. And the fact that some Thai support does not prove anything, because most dictatorships have public support at some point, usually through fear.